All right, hello and welcome to my example presentation for the Biosphere Reserve project. I'm going to be talking about Sobo, Karamuke, and Okue Biosphere Reserve, which is found in southern Japan. So the reason I chose this Biosphere Reserve is because I kind of like Kyushu, which is the southernmost of Japan's main islands, and it's rich in a lot of Studio Ghibli-inspired landscapes, which can be found all over the country, of course. All of the films are inspired by different parts of Japan, but there are quite a few areas in Kyushu too that specifically recall some of the films, like Castle in the Sky, for example. Lapita Road in the Aso region of Japan is one of the sorts of inspirations for this sort of fog, cloud-soaked valley with a road and city cutting through it. There's one of many Totoro forests in Itoshima in Fukuoka Prefecture. So this is Totoro no Mori, and that's from my neighbor Totoro. And then Yakushima Island, which it looks like is like way off the map. It is actually kind of far out from the main island of Kyushu, and the cedar forests and Hinoki cypress here were inspirations for Princess Mononoke. So I'm going to be focusing on then Sobo, Karamuke, and Okue Biosphere Reserve, which is roughly outlined in this region here. This is the general transition zone, and then there's a buffer area that is within this region, and then a few, three core protected areas in this Biosphere Reserve. So Sobo, Karamuke, and Okue is one of 10 biosphere reserves in Japan. This specific reserve was first nominated in 2017, and it consists of over 240,000 hectares of land that runs along the border of Oita and Miyazaki prefectures. The human population within this transition area is about just a little bit under 100,000 people, and the people are critical to the success of the Biosphere Reserve. The local councils of the areas within this range, which are kind of outlined on this map here, there's a few cities along the north, and then there's a few towns along the south. They're absolutely critical for kind of like acknowledging like what's going on in this area, working with the natural surroundings, and actually getting it recognized as a Biosphere Reserve also. So in this Biosphere Reserve, there's a number of rare species, of course, that are being specifically protected. The region includes temperate high-altitude forests, and in these kinds of high-altitude forests, it can be cooler temperatures, and these temperatures do kind of depend on mountain height, but in general, cooler temperatures. One very interesting species is Sobo salamander, which is endemic only to the streams in this mountain range. So this is a salamander species that can only be found in this Sobo, Karamuke, Okue mountain range. So it's very rare. It's endangered, it's rare, and it is very special to this region. Next, we have the Japanese siro, or the goat antelope. This is kind of interesting because it's a government-designated special natural monument. Like, it's a recognized symbol of Japan, this goat antelope. Actually, and there's some kind of similar species in some Studio Ghibli films, actually, which I think is really cool. I do not believe that this species is endangered, like at a national level, but there is concern that it could be lost in the Kyushu region, so in this main island where the Biosphere Reserve is found. Another important species that is being protected in this region is the Great Purple Emperor, which is a nymphalid butterfly, and it's the national butterfly of Japan. So it's very kind of iconic. I love the colors there, the purple and everything. So this is also being protected in this area. Now, we have a lot of unique vegetation in this region as well. In the spring, what we see pictured here is Akebono tsutsuji azaleas, and these azaleas are endemic to Kyushu, so they kind of attract a lot of hikers, and the hikers are going up into the mountains, and they can see these beautiful blooms in the spring. It's quite a sight to see. Apparently, I'd like to go. That's the whole point, right? In the late summer, Kiren. The name of the genus is Kiren Geshoma, which is a very rare endangered trumpet-shaped flower in this Sohayaki group, which is essentially just a unique floral region in parts of Japan and China where there's just, I'm not a botanist, but there's unique flora here as well. This is an endangered species, and people can come and see it in this park. So mountain culture in the region, the steep rocky cliffs of Mount Sobo, Mount Katamuki is the one in the picture here, and then Mount Okue, they're surrounded by scenic landscapes, valleys, forests, all of that kind of thing. The humans that live in this area, they grow rice in terraces, they harvest timber from there as well. Shiitake mushrooms, actually, the machete cultivation technique is thought to have begun several hundred years ago in this area. And there's kind of some debate, I guess, historically about whether shiitake mushrooms were introduced to Japan from China because there's early records of harvesting or cultivating shiitake in China. But through, I guess, some research and some DNA analysis, they have figured out that shiitake mushrooms come from right here in Miyazaki Prefecture and were later spread into China, which I think is kind of interesting and also kind of neat how like people will disagree about like where something originated because it's just so central to their culture. Other things that are happening kind of culturally in this area, there's a number of festivals that take place. Takachiho Kagura is a special type of dance that is kind of like, I guess, supposed to be dedicated to a local god in Takachiho town. The Yokagura is a set of apparently 33 dances that's performed all in one night, and that happens at autumn and winter festivals to kind of pray for a successful harvest. But the Takachiho Kagura, so this is just one of those dances, is done many nights, I think, and you can actually see this kind of snippet of what happens there. And in these dances, there's characters that are represented from Japanese folklore and legends as well. Bamboo is harvested, and bamboo work is actually very unique and predominant throughout this region, especially in the Takachiho town area and outwards. Part of it is maybe just how people understand that they're connected to nature, but bamboo is used to make like dishes, cups. It's used in preparing like traditional foods and drinks. So it's kind of like a cultural tool, maybe because these locations were kind of remote, so they're making use of natural resources. They're essential, especially for farmers in the area, and it's thought that farmers were the ones to have actually begun working on some of these bamboo vessels and using them in this way. And they would do this when they're actually out in the field too. They wouldn't go all the way back home. So conservation in the area, I kind of went through some of the official resources for this Biosphere Reserve because I kind of wanted to get all the goals exactly right. The first goal that they have in this area is continuous conservation of precious ecosystem. And this is kind of brought about in two ways, through enhancing the actual conservation that's going on by promoting research. I think research and monitoring, of course, has been a theme in this class for successful conservation outcomes. Then the other kind of aspect of this is to actually promote conservation from local residents too. So success of any kind of conservation is totally dependent on if local residents are involved or not. The second goal or action policy is support for academic research, surveys, and training. So this does kind of connect to that one from before, and the goal is to promote surveys in the area to kind of research the different populations and species that are present, to promote economically sustainable development, I believe in coordination with the communities, and this does require some research to be able to kind of implement something that's going to align with the goals of the park in terms of conservation, and then allowing kind of, again, just regular use of this area. And then also just to work as a model, to serve as a model in Japan, to serve as a model for the world in terms of successful conservation and management strategies. And I think being recognized as a biosphere reserve does align and show that they are actually quite successful in being a model here. And then the third policy they have is sustainable development through symbiosis with nature. And this one, like before, it builds kind of on that last one where we're looking at economic sustainable development. And the goal is to just continue developing the region as it's kind of being continuously used, but keeping with just the priorities and the needs for using resources in the area, but to also secure and kind of establish protections so that it's passed on to future generations. So that kind of beneficiary value, if we wanted to think back to ecosystem values. Now, just kind of looking at some of the things that are going on in the region, I wanted to just throw out a few photos from that kind of document I was looking at that was outlining the basic action policies or goals for this biosphere reserve. I think it's kind of neat seeing like some successful outcomes as well. Like in one of the bottom pictures, we see fireflies along the restored Hakkasan River, which is really neat. Fireflies are a symbol in Japan. They're really popular, really beautiful. And then also just kind of seeing that there is active management in the area, like thinning, cutting down trees, thinning forests to make sure they are functioning, and that this also can be a sustainable use of resources in a way. So you can obtain timber, but then also be helping to benefit the function and keeping the ecosystem healthy. So lots of good stuff going on there, and their mascot is one of the Japanese hero is kind of like their mascot. So he's like a little logo. He appears on a lot of their handouts and informations and things like that. So to visit the reserve, I guess most international flights, of course, go through Tokyo Narita or Tokyo Haneda airports. So if you're coming from Louisiana, I think at a minimum you'd probably fly through Dallas or Atlanta, or maybe you go Dallas to Seattle or Dallas to somewhere else and end up in Tokyo. But from Tokyo, then you take domestic flight, or I suppose a 6.5 hour train ride to either Fukuoka or Kitakyushu, which is just in the northern part of that southern main island. And from here, it gets kind of tricky because the Biosphere Reserve is not connected by train, and as far as buses go, it's kind of far in the middle of the mountains, and again, not very easily accessible. So a rental car is going to be very important here, but to rent a car in Japan, you do need an international driver's permit, which are very easy. I think you pay about $20, $30 to get one of them. You can get it from a AAA office. You go in, and it's basically just a translation of your license into something like 10 different languages. So you get an IDP before you go. You can go there, and then you hand that over with your driver's license and your passport, and you can rent a car. From there, it would be driving to Takachiho Town, I think is going to be the best place to stay because it's very close to Mount Sobo. It has a lot of good, interesting history and culture in the area. And there's a lot of other really beautiful tourist attractions to see, like Takachiho Gorge, which is these enormous, impressive basalt columns. So some very fascinating geology, and there's a waterfall, and then people can rent paddle boats and kind of paddle under the waterfall and stuff, which I think sounds really fun. But bring a partner. It's also kind of romantic. Don't just go on your own. I know somebody who went, and he's like, I just rented one on my own. I was like, were people staring at you? Because that's weird. Other things in the area, Amano Iwato Shrine. It's a shrine in a cave, which is another kind of attraction in the area. As far as food goes, I think local cuisine is always important to sample. The rice being kind of grown in these terraces is something that's kind of unique to the agriculture that's going on, the traditional agriculture techniques that are being used in the Biosphere Reserve transition area. But the important thing is that the temperature is kind of different from other areas of Japan where they grow rice, and apparently that does affect the flavor, and that they dry the rice in the sun, which is kind of what we see in the picture here, and that kind of gives it a richer taste as well, which I think is kind of interesting. But I think what I would be most excited to do, just outside of seeing nature and walking in the mountains and stuff, would be I'm trying nagashi somen, which are flowing noodles. Basically, this is something that is popular in the summer, where there's like little water flowing down these cut bamboo slits, and then little bunches of noodles come by occasionally, and you pick up the noodles with your chopsticks, and then you dip them, and you dip them in kind of a Japanese soup, and then you get to enjoy them. So you just kind of like the noodles flow down this like bamboo pipe, and you just kind of collect them as they go, and you eat the noodles. So I think that would be really cool. Always wanted to try that. It's kind of intimidating, I think, in a way, but it seems like it'd be really neat. And it is something that originated right here in this specific area. I know that this kind of thing you can see in other parts of Japan, including Kyoto, but nagashi somen did originate right in this Takachiho town area in this Biosphere Reserve region. So I think this is really cool. This is my example presentation, and it did go a little bit long, I think. So a little bit long, and also I might have to deduct some points for myself for not really having enough references. I did this kind of fast and didn't put together a reference slide, or I didn't put references next to a lot of my photos. So I could have done better here for sure, but it's just kind of fun, and I want you to have fun with this project too. So let me know if you've got questions. Otherwise, take care. See you all next week, or the week, whichever week we meet. So see you all next time.